Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode here with your public health specialist JJ. And today I'm going to be talking about diabetes. So I'm going to be talking about specifically glucose, how glucose is absorbed, how it's stored, and the difference between the fed state and the fasted state. So the fed state, the absorptive state, and the post-absorptive state or the fasting state. So let's get into it. If you stay until the end, you'll get all the different information about the different states, and I'm going to be talking about diabetes as well and what it can affect and what happens, and some foods that are beneficial, and I'll also touch on the GI, the glycemic index, so how things affect your blood glucose. So let's get straight into it. So you have three macronutrients, or basic big nutrients. So you have your proteins, fats or triglycerides, and carbohydrates, which become glucose. Proteins become amino acids. So you are eating food, which is made up of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, which get broken down further into glucose, fiber, triglycerides, and amino acids. And then from these, you get the building blocks again. So we are going to be focusing on glucose. All three of these can be used as fuel. All three of them can become glucose, which is your primary form of energy that's used throughout your body. So some of your organs can use ketones, but it is not beneficial to that organ. Glucose is you can call it a clean burning fuel. There's not lots of residual left over. With ketones, there's a lot of residual things left over, and it causes an acid state in your body where glucose does not affect the pH. So this is not your blood pH, it's your intracellular and or extracellular pH, which can fluctuate. Just a note, if your blood pH changes, you die. So it's not your blood pH, but it's the pH of your cells, your intra and your extracellular fluid. So your triglycerides, your fat, can bypass your liver and go straight into your bloodstream. So fat can go directly and be absorbed into your blood, whereas glucose, it has to go through the liver, and the protein has to go, or the amino acids go through your liver, where it undergoes a Krebs cycle, and that makes the ATP, which is your energy molecule. And then what's left over, carbohydrates, not carbohydrates, CO2, carbon dioxide, which you breathe out, and then also water. So it makes about 32 to 36 ATP molecules, which is your energy molecule. And there are different processes that are linked to this. So your glucose moves down, becomes pyruvate, which enters the Krebs cycle, which goes to acetyl-CoA, which makes ATP, becomes OAA, oxaloacetate. I can't remember. OAA. Oxaloacetate. So, I'm a little itchy. So metabolism works in this way to make energy. So in your absorptive state, you are using that. So you are eating. This is your fed state. So when you are being fed, when you are eating, it means glucose and energy is coming in. So you are making energy, ATP, adenotriphosphate, from glucose. So that is what happens in your body in the Krebs cycle. You are making ATP to use as energy. So that goes to your muscles, goes to your organs, and that's what facilitates them fulfilling their function. So in your absorptive state, you have your glucose that's going into your blood. So this fluctuation in blood glucose is felt in your insulin, not your insulin, your pancreas, which in your alpha cells will then secrete insulin. So your pancreas gets the signal that your blood glucose is rising. Your body wants to keep it balanced, because if it's too high, it's dangerous for your body. If it's too low, it's also dangerous for your body. If it's too high, your cells can get damaged and you can go into shock. If it's too low, your body stops functioning because it does not have energy. So then you can also go into a coma. So both high and low can lead to a coma, and it leads to can lead to death. A high glucose can be easily corrected, less easily than a low glucose. Low glucose, you eat something and you raise it. High glucose, there's many things that needs to happen for you to bring it down. It's not so easy. The easiest way is to inject yourself with glucose. Inject yourself with insulin. I am misspeaking today. So when there's a fluctuation in your blood glucose, when your blood glucose goes higher, your pancreas gets the signal to secrete insulin. Your insulin is secreted from your beta cells in your pancreas. And what this does, it opens up the transport between your organs and your blood. So then these transport gates are open and you can then take out glucose to be stored in your different organs, mainly your liver, some in your kidneys and your muscle, so mainly. So in your liver, glucose will be stored as glucagon. So this has to go through a process where glucose are fused together, kind of like Lego blocks being clicked together to form glycogen, which will then be its stored form. And this also gets then into your adipose tissue. So adipose tissue needs glucose to enter, needs insulin for glucose to enter. So in your adipose tissue, glucose cannot just come in, or glycogen cannot just come in to be stored. It needs insulin. So insulin is also the hormone that facilitates storage of glucose. So it makes your body pull out glucose out of your blood and puts it into storage. So glucose gets stored because of insulin. So it gets stored in your muscle, your fat, which are insulin dependent. So it needs insulin to be stored. Your brain, your kidneys, your liver, and your intestines are insulin independent, meaning they can absorb glucose without needing insulin. Your muscle also needs insulin for glucose to be stored there. And for muscle movements and for exercise, you need that stored glucose because you'll use that. So this is also an important point. Insulin also inhibits lipolysis and proteolysis, meaning it does not allow your body to break down proteins and it does not allow your body to break down fat. So stored fat, stored protein stays in that form when insulin is released. So this is where the hypothesis comes from, that you need to not eat to break down your lipids, your fat, and your protein, so that you can lose weight. Because if you are not eating, your body is not secreting insulin, which means you can break down fat and protein to use as energy. Just a little point there. So it's important to remember that insulin is the hormone that's released to bring down your blood glucose. So this is where the GI is important, your glycemic index. So the food that will either increase your blood glucose very quickly in a short amount of time, or if that food is a gradual increase with a lower peak. So if you're eating something like a slice of white bread or jelly candy, your blood glucose will very quickly spike because that is broken down rapidly and a lot of glucose is entering your bloodstream. So a lot of insulin will be secreted because you are creating a very quick spike in blood glucose. When you are eating a fruit or a vegetable or something that's from a whole grain, there's a less pronounced spike. It's a gradual release because there's a lot of fiber in there. So it's a gradual release with less insulin needed. So insulin is spaced over time. Your body can use the glucose that it is creating or breaking down and absorbing more easily because there's not the spike. And if you are then active and you are doing things, then you are using that energy and it does not have to be stored. It's when you are eating too much, too quickly, and very close space of time without exercise, without movement, where insulin will be secreted a lot, and that will lead to storage. So more insulin is secreted when it's very high GI food. So when it's a food that is easily broken down and it creates a lot of glucose in a short amount of time. So that is what can lead to your pancreatic burnout, where your pancreas decreases function gradually over time and finally stops, where then you need insulin. So you have insulin-dependent diabetes. You also get insulin-independent diabetes, where you can manage it with a lifestyle and your pancreas still has function, so it can still secrete insulin. It's when your pancreas stops secreting insulin where it becomes a huge problem. So your pancreas has two kinds of cells: beta cells, which secrete insulin, and you have your alpha cells, which produce glucagon. So glucagon stimulates glucose production. So I've talked about the fed state, where your body wants to store glucose, make it into glucagon. So this is with glucose storage. Now I'll talk about when you are fasting. So this is the post-absorptive state, when your body is not actively breaking down food to make glucose. So normally your blood glucose is between 4 and 6 millimoles per liter. So that is your target range. If it's too high or too low, you'll start feeling the effects of it. If it's too low, you can start feeling dizzy, low on energy, tired, irritable. When it's very high, you can start to feel hyperactive, dizzy, headaches, and some of the symptoms might overlap, like headache, tremors, dizziness. So when you are fasting, the post-absorptive state, your alpha cells in your pancreas will secrete glucagon, which is stimulating glucose production. So this can lead to gluconeogenesis, can lead to lipolysis and proteolysis, where you are trying to use your fats and your proteins to make glucose, as well as producing glucose from your stored glucagon. So generally, someone that's about 70 to 75 kilograms will have 80 to 90 grams of stored glycogen. So you can use about 8% of the stored glycogen per hour, and your kidneys, you have about 10% of glucose storage. So you are going to want to create or make glucose if you are not eating. If it's not coming in, your body has to get it from somewhere. So your beta cells will stop producing insulin in this fasting or post-absorptive state, because you need to increase your blood glucose. You'll also start to feel hungry at this point, because your body is trying to tell you glucose needs to go up. So glucagon increases is a positive regulator, so it increases proteolysis, the breakdown of protein to amino acids, which can then go to glucose, and alanine can go straight into the Krebs cycle and make ATP or glucose. In your adipose tissue, your fatty tissue, your triglycerides will go into fatty acids and glycerols. So 3 glycerols, 1 fatty acid. And this fatty acid can go into your Krebs cycle as acetyl-CoA, and glycerol can also go into the Krebs cycle, and they will make glucose for you. So you can break down both proteins and fats to make glucose. You can also then use what you have stored to make energy. So you'll first use the stores that you have, your liver and your muscle, for example. Then you'll go to your protein, then you'll go to your fats. So you will use some of the things in your body that you have stored. So you have several hormones that are influenced by insulin and glucagon, namely noradrenaline, adrenaline, cortisol, growth hormone, and thyroid hormones. And these promote gluconeogenesis, or making glucose, raising your blood glucose. So they will work together to make more glucose and raise your blood glucose. So that is what happens in the fasting state. That's a little of what happens in the fed state as well. So what's important here is what I talked about with the GI, or your blood glucose, where you have the spikes in your in your blood glucose. So the glycemic index, because if you have a very high spike in your blood glucose over a short period of time, your body is going to secrete a lot of insulin, and that will then be pulled out and be stored. And then it goes low again, so you have to eat something. So it's this fluctuation, up and down, up and down, up and down. And you feel terrible if you're eating candy the whole day, because your blood sugar is going up and down, up and down, up and down. Your body is making insulin, it's taking that out, it's storing it, your blood glucose falls again, you eat something again, it goes up, too high, insulin, falls again, up, fall, up, down. So it's this continual stress on your body, and over time that damages your organs and your pancreas specifically, and it can cause weight gain, lots of thirst, lots of hunger the whole time, because you're not eating high nutrient foods or nutrient dense foods. So it can cause diabetes in the long term. The glucose molecule is also big, and it is sharp. It's a hexagon shape. So it can damage sensitive and small tiny vessels. So this happens especially in your extremities, so it can damage your nervous system. It can stop feeling in your fingers and your toes, which is very dangerous, because you can get cuts and they don't heal as they should, because you have a lot of glucose and not as many immune cells in your blood. It can damage your eyes, because you have very sensitive and small vessels in your eyes as well. So those are the places that it can cause a lot of damage, in your brain as well, and in your other organs, which are sensitive to fluctuations in glucose, blood glucose. So easy, good way to protect your pancreas: eat food with lots and lots of fiber. So natural occurring foods, fruit, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and choose ones that have not been processed that much, that's more in their natural state. So you have intact fiber. Fiber causes a slower release of the glucose, so that you can have more energy over a longer period of time. So that is important. And you can also get different kinds of herbs that will help your body maintain a positive and a more balanced blood glucose. And I can talk about that in a next episode. So exercise is also good for diabetes, because it makes your body more sensitive to insulin, and you need less insulin over the long term. So together with a lifestyle change, having more natural foods, less processed foods with high fiber that's closer to its natural form, eating fruit with a skin and vegetables with a skin on, having lots of nuts and seeds, those can help. Exercise, fluids, they can also help with that. So I hope this has been beneficial. If it has, like, share, subscribe, join if you want to have a more personalized evaluation and lifestyle advice. So as always, stay healthy, and to God be the glory.